In this video, I'm going to talk about running your tests at the speed of thought, which is the promise of this plugin vim-test that I've been using for years and definitely use every day. And what that looks like is when you're in your tests, if you want to run the test that's right under your cursor, you can do that. If you want to run the tests for the whole file, you can do that. And then no matter where you are in the project, you can always run the last test that you ran, which happens to be for the whole file. And I'm going to talk about how this can be incredibly useful as you do test-driven development or not, or work in legacy code, which is what I'm going to do today. So looking at this plugin, once you've set it up, which is very straightforward, then out of the box, you get good support for certainly every language I've worked with. So whenever I go into a Ruby project, Python, Kotlin, or TypeScript recently, it's just worked out of the box. So the same bindings let me run tests for all of these different languages. Then you can set up the bindings as you like. And in my case, I use test nearest to test the test that's under the cursor, testing the whole file, which I usually alternate between, and testing the last test, whatever that was, the whole file or an individual test. And I'll use those three again and again. And in my case, I am sending the commands to Neoterm, which is using the Neovim terminal, but I've also used tslime to send it to a tmux pane. That worked very well. Or you can just actually send it to like a shell command in Vim. So it requires no setup to get going, and then you can customize it considerably as you go along. So one reason why I find this to be particularly useful is right now I have this project, Gilded Rose, Refactoring, Kata, which I'm just using as an example. So what this is a refactoring exercise, and this particular setup of it is based on Sandy Metz's presentation, All the Little Things, which I would definitely recommend. And the task is to take a series of tests that you're given and an implementation that is very poor, and to refactor it in any way you like. And the original task was more like you get this wall of text and your job is to write the test cases and the implementation, which is a much harder task, definitely takes a lot longer, but everyone has something to learn from it. So what this looks like is a terrible nested conditional or number of conditionals all in one tick function. And just broadly, you have these different kinds of items, and as time passes, as the tick function is called, then the quality of these items goes up or down, generally down, but sometimes goes up. So if we imagine this is our legacy code that we're working with, we go and look at our tests, then we first of all have passing tests, so we are cleared to do some refactoring. And knowing a bit about this project already, I have an idea of what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and look at aged brie as just a particular item. So when I do that, I just want to run the tests for aged brie only. And then I go off to the code. It's the first one that's mentioned here, and following somewhat Sandy's approach, then I might decide to isolate just this one item, and I'm just going to return early. So now when I run these tests, naturally everything's going to fail. And also I have a number of failures, 7 failures. It's a bit too much to deal with at once. So I might decide to just go with the first one, because I don't know much about this project, trying to work out what is the behavior of this at all. So aged brie, it starts with days remaining 5, quality 10, and after the tick function is called, then days remaining has gone down by 1, but quality has gone up by 1. So just to make this pass, then I can just decrement days remaining, and quality went up by 1. So I can run that, and that passes now. Go to the next one, max quality, that fails. So quality shouldn't be able to go above 50. So I'll go and implement that too. So I would say the quality is the minimum of these two. So now that's passing, and if I wanted to, I could just quickly check I haven't lost anything there. On to the next test case, you can see that days remaining is 0, it's now gone negative, and the quality's gone up by 2. So if we just go and implement that, say days remaining is less than or equal to 0, then we are going to actually increase by 2. So that test is passing. And if we go and check the next one, that's green. So maybe I'll run just the whole group again and see, okay, aged brie appears to be done. It doesn't mean that it's fully correct, but we are done in terms of what we're going to do here. And so we can move on to the next item. And we haven't broken anything because following Sandy's approach, we have isolated just this individual item. We haven't modified any of the rest of the code, but it's returning, so we're not actually going to be using any of this logic for the aged brie. So the next one we can do next in terms of the tests, which I will borrow this because it's actually quite a long name. So same as before, going to return, and bizarrely the tests pass. And we have this idea actually that it's not necessary to do anything. 580, 580, no, it's not changing. So it seems like we're actually done there. And so on and so on. We can continue and go through these tests, and we can isolate and do our refactoring. And what I find useful about this is that I can focus, and as I am going through and making changes, whatever those changes might be, then I can always be running the last test that was of interest to me. So if I break something here, then I'm just focused on these. And then maybe I decide that I'm just going to focus on one particular test in that group, but I fix it and I can see again the group is passing. And so I can zoom in and out, and you really do get close to that goal of running tests at the speed of thought. Last thing I'll say is I'm moving between the tests file and the implementation because both are following an expected structure, and I'm able to use this alternate file binding which is provided by Vim rake in this case, and I'd recommend that for any Ruby project. And I can also do things like, the screen is quite small, but I'd usually be opening these out in splits so that I can be making a change, running tests. I could then go and change tests or zoom into a particular test, and I don't need to be switching back and forth. I can move around the panes instead. And that is a Tim Pope plugin. I'd recommend Vim rake and Vim Rails if you're doing Ruby development. And if you'd like to know more about how to actually set these plugins up in detail, bindings, and other tips for Ruby projects, then just let me know in the comments. And I'm going to do another video on actually going through this Gilded Rose refactoring because I think it's a good one to practice.